Hello and welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are your hosts, Chris and Philly, co-founders of a multi-award-winning functional medicine practice, serving busy people with energy, mood, and gut issues.
While busyness, addictive doing, people-pleasing, and perfectionism might be the norm, it's not normal, and it's a major contributor to health issues.
Our goal with this show is to give you a holistic root cause approach to healing your body so that you don't have to continue doctor or diet hopping or popping a gazillion supplements hoping something might stick.
So get ready to heal your body, get your spark back, deeply connect with yourself, and step into the life of your dreams.
Let's dive in.
Hello, welcome to today's episode. We are talking with the wonderful Alpha Schulte, who is a money mindset coach, all about money mindset and the connection to body burnout. So Chris and I asked Alpha onto the show because money and finances are such a huge stressor for many people, and it's affecting our collective health. That might look like you're really struggling to make ends meet. I know that there's a lot of people who are struggling with the raising of rates and prices and all that sort of stuff. You also might be making enough money and you are actually comfortable in terms of your meeting your needs. However, your relationship with money can make you feel like you've never got enough, like you have to work harder, you have to earn more, you need to do more in order to feel like you're a good and worthwhile human being. It was the number one stress for my own self, which directly impacted my health, especially during COVID times. It really came to the surface that, oh my gosh, my relationship with money is literally causing histamine intolerance, insomnia, anxiety, and all sorts of other stuff. I've shared that story. Can't remember what the episode number is, but it was all about money trauma and my own story and how clearing that and unraveling my beliefs and my relationship around money allowed me to not just heal my finances and my business but also literally heal my body. So we're going to talk all about this with Alpha today and how you can unravel your beliefs and your relationship so that you can support recovery from body burnout. Something that Alpha does talk about is retraining or rewiring the brain around your money mindset. And that brings me to, I'm going to read Alpha's official bio in a second and then we'll jump into the episode. But around rewiring, I just want to make an announcement that next month we are holding a live free training week or coaching week all about rewire your brain to heal from body burnout. Now, we actually did a poll in our Facebook group and on Instagram stories, and I listed about 8 different topics that we could do a free coaching week on, and this one was by far the most popular. So we are putting that one on in September. I'm going to put in the show note links, the link that you can register to. This is free and it's going to be gold. Chris and I are not into just giving you more information that you consume. We love to get deep down and transformative, not just with our clients, but when we hold something for free to give you a great experience in terms of how it feels to work with us at a deeper root cause level, and also to give you some wins right away. So we're going to go over 3 different topics during this coaching week. So day 1, we're going to look at brain inflammation and how it is hard to rewire an inflamed brain and what to do about it. Day 2, we're going to dive into your patterns and how to rewire the brain and your patterns so just doing brain rewiring or retraining exercises and practices doesn't end up just being a Band-Aid approach. And day 3 is all about rewiring your pain signals. So how you can create new neural pathways of safety, which will essentially switch off symptoms. So super excited to share this live coaching week with you and hope you can join us. Jump into the show notes to register. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to officially introduce Alpha by reading her bio, and then we'll jump into our conversation today. So Alpha started off as a corporate tax accountant, but decided she preferred working with clients on more than just tax. So she moved into management consulting for over a decade. During this time, she was on her own personal development journey and studied different modalities. Plus, she studied financial planning when she realized she knew very little about personal finances, even as a tax accountant. Wanting to help women with their financial literacy, she found herself working with business owners on both their money mindset and their financial literacy. Seeing women grow in financial confidence and take control of their mindset is what she loves most. So let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome, everybody, to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We're super excited to have Alpha Schulte on the line today to have a chat about money and mindset and all that sort of really cool stuff that we find really interesting, and no doubt you will too. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so excited. I actually had a conversation with Alpha a couple of days ago for her podcast, so it's awesome to spin the table. So we love to just get personal with our guests first of all, so that people can kind of like relate to what you're about to talk about too. So we are going to talk about more money mindset, self-awareness. It plays such a huge role in people's burnout stories and body burnout. And for me personally, it had it was the major stress for me that led to a lot of my health issues. So I'm really excited to dig into that side of things. But can you share with our audience any, I guess, body burnout experience that you've had in the past, and how that sort of links up with what you do now as a money mindset coach?
Yes, I think I've had when you told me that you were going to ask this question, I thought, oh yeah, because I tend to block some of that stuff out, to be honest, because I'm like, oh, I just need to, I've done the work. But yeah, there's been a few dips in my life, and probably the first one was more of a health physical one when I was a teenager, when I realized I couldn't digest meat well, and I was feeling very unwell. I never had energy. I always had headaches. I was anemic. I couldn't lose weight. It was one of those things where, looking back on it now, I realized it was my diet. But at the time, that I'm in my mid-40s. So when I was a teenager, people weren't really thinking about food as nutrition and healing your body yet. It wasn't kind of part of the thing. So when my father had gone away for a few weeks, and I hadn't eaten meat for a few weeks, and I realized I had no headaches and I was feeling a lot more energetic. And I thought, oh, wow. And vegetarianism was not really a thing either then. And my family are Southern Eastern European. They eat a lot, like their famous dishes are all meat related. My mother's Austrian, so it's all about schnitzel. My father's Macedonian, so there's so much meat in that diet. So I was like this weird person, but I'm like, you know what? I'm never going back. I feel fantastic. I am never going back. And I realized then, and I haven't eaten red meat since. I did eat white meat for a little bit, but then I realized that didn't work either. So that was really the first time I realized the body part. But then as I got older, other stresses kind of come in, and I suppose career choices, because you do the thing that you're supposed to do, and then you work really hard at something that's just not you, and your body is rejecting the world, but you think you're doing the thing that you need to do. And there's just this conflict that just creates complete shutdown in some areas. So I experienced that in my mid-20s, changed careers. And then I probably experienced it most dramatically again after I had my daughter. I did not handle the newborn phase well at all. I lost, like everybody talks about trying to lose the baby weight. Well, I lost the baby weight and another like 5 kilos within 6 weeks. So I don't eat when I'm stressed. And and that impacted so many other things like feeding and you name it. So, and then I was sort of like, I've really got to get myself back together again. And because I'd started the money journey and I'd been on a personal development journey, I had some tools and I had some practitioners that I trusted, because, listening to your story about GPs, I never had very good experiences with them either. So they're pretty much the last resort for me. if something's going on in my world, physically. So I then started to do a bit more research in the money and the mindset side, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so linked. So it's all very intertwined, but they're probably the major dips in my world that have then sort of led me to do what I do, because I see money as a huge stressor, both mentally and physically. People working themselves to the bone to try and make enough money because they never feel like they have enough, and there's so much underlying that. So that,
Mm.
yeah, that drives a lot of the work I do now.
Yeah, so with the burnout, they're trying to push and trying to do the things you think you should be doing. Like, what for you did you discover over the time was the deepest root cause that was driving all of that?
I think it was a underlying fear of not being accepted. And on the one hand, I'm Aquarius, so I do like to kind of do my own thing, but I do it quietly. And if anybody else was noticing what I was doing, I was like, oh, that's what if they like judge me for that? And I realized it was self-judgment because
Mm.
everybody else is going around doing their own thing, worried about themselves. And I realized that it was a lot of me just judging me and going. And then after I had my daughter, I think I kind of had this realization that, you know what? I don't know what on earth am I doing? I now have this, I'm a role model now to this little person, little girl, and I don't want her to have all these hang-ups. Like I didn't smile properly as a teenager because I thought I had chubby cheeks because I used to get
Oh.
my cheeks pinched a lot. It's
Mm.
a very, again, cultural thing. But
Mm.
I didn't, there is no photo of me between the ages of like 15 and 17 where I'm smiling properly.
Wow.
So there was a lot of body issues, and there was,
Yeah.
so there's all this stuff. And I got to one point where I just got so fed up about worrying about so many stupid, insignificant things. And I also did a trip with the Hunger Project and Business Chicks over to Uganda back in about 11 years ago now. And being there, watching what they had to go through, I was like, I don't know why. I'm so worried about whether or not I have cheeks when I smile,
Mm.
or whether I have hips and I'm a pear shaped. Like,
Mm.
what on earth? I have enough food to eat. I don't need to worry about so many things. So it
Mm.
was a bit of a reality check, a couple of
Mm.
those bits and pieces. But yes, becoming a mum probably really hammered it together, because I thought I do not want my daughter to grow up with any of those issues. And the first time my dad said anything slightly like what he said to me, I was like, you'll be out of my life and you'll never see your grandchild again if you
Oh,
ever say anything like that to her. So
Mm-hmm. Let's create some healthy beliefs in this child.
yes, I'm sure I will screw her up in other ways, but that one's not going to be it. I won't repeat that one.
Yeah, yeah. So, so ex-accountant moved into more of the money mindset side of things. What for you? Like, why did you start choosing that?
Yes, well, I fell into accounting. That was that, you finish high school and you feel like you've got to pick something for the rest of your life. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I love traveling. So I initially picked international business because I was like, oh, well, I can travel the world and do business. Not that I had any idea what that meant back then. And I couldn't find a job after I finished my degree. And I sort of ended up being offered a vacation job in one of the big accounting firms. And of course, I've got my grandmother in my ear going, she said it in German, but in English, it's like, you need a decent job. Like that's a good job for you. So I had to go back to uni and study accounting. And I was good at the numbers, and I liked dealing with clients, but I did not like all of the legality around tax and just the compliance. It was boring,
mm,
but I enjoyed the problem solving part of it. So I stayed in that sphere for about 6 years. And that's probably from if a mental space was probably one of my dips in my life,
Mm.
because I just was not aligned with who I was and what I wanted to do at all. But I was ticking the box for my grandmother in particular.
Mhm. Okay. So money, I mean, we see is a huge issue
mm.
when it comes to burnout, health issues, and it often also is connected with patterns of busyness as well. Busyness, perfectionism, people pleasing,
Yes.
overworking. Do you see that in your clients, in your space of the world as well?
Yes. Yeah, I see it. I see a lot of fear around money. And to be honest, a lot of it is driven by our society and the messaging that comes
Mm.
to us as well. So there's like, for instance, the fear that I had in my family, that my grandmother came from like war-torn Europe and had experienced, the depression, and she actually grew up during that period. And all of this, she hoarded so many things. She kept bottles of water under her garage
You're
just
right.
for years and years. And I see a lot of the generational stuff coming through my clients, the fears that their parents have had, their grandparents have had sitting on them. And then
Mm.
also there is a certain gender fear that for women in particular, because up until not that long ago, women couldn't work. They couldn't do anything without a husband's approval. And there's still countries in the world that have that issue as well. But as women business owners that I work with primarily, they have this belief that, oh, I can't reach a certain level, or I don't want to, earn more than my husband if they're married. Or quite often I end up with clients who are in a transition period from a relationship standpoint, and they're like, oh, can I actually even support myself? Like, I'm fearful that if anything goes wrong, I can't support my family or myself or my kids. And then I'm just gonna have to rely on a partner again.
Mm.
So there is a lot of fear around it, and that drives some very sort of small thinking. So that's the irony of it. The smaller we think, the smaller we live. And there is a certain amount of risk taking in life, especially when you're in a business, but it's got to be calculated still. That's not to say you just go jump off a building and you're like, oh, whoops, I forgot the parachute. But there's ways and there's ways to do things.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I see that driving a lot of behavior and the overwork, people with multiple jobs, business owners with other jobs, and it drives their health downwards, and that then
Mm.
also impacts their ability to do their work, because if their business or their work requires them to physically do it, and you can't kind of work from home if you're a bit sick, then they don't end up earning either. So it just perpetuates the cycle.
Mm, mm. I see. What is it? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have you heard it? Yeah. So right down the
Like
bottom is
physiological
Survival.
survival. But like for some people, the thought of not having any money at all, I feel like fits down there as well. It's like when I
Yes.
don't have money, then I can't feed myself or my children. I don't have a warm house over my head. So from a nervous system evolutionary point of view as well, money is like kind of like primal in a way too, in terms of it. People have connected that to their primal needs. And it kind of is the case too in the modern world.
Yes, that's right. Can I feed myself? Can I house? Can I clothe? All of those things. And as a parent, it amplifies because you want to be able to make sure that you can provide for your kids too.
Yeah.
And then changing that becomes difficult because our primal instinct is linked to our current reality, because
Mm.
our current reality, like we were talking about the other day, keeps us alive. We don't thrive, but we're alive. So we're
Mm.
like, but if we want to change anything, then our bodies are just going to suddenly like shun it and go, well, hang on a minute. You want to change the recipe? The recipe's been working, but you want to change it? No. So it
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes throws barriers in your way. Like I end up, I ended up injuring myself this week. And I feel like there's some mental stuff behind that, which I will work on. But, we often have obstacles that will come in our way because we want to grow and we want to thrive, but our primal physiology is rejecting the idea of it, because what if it hurts us, or what if it kills us?
Yeah.
So it makes it really hard to then the perception also to make the changes, but then to actually do them in the right way. But what is the right way?
Yeah. Yeah. Unresourceful money mindsets. What are some patterns that you see around that are also connected to things like burnout, chronic health issues?
Yeah. I see a lot of people like leaning on poor nutrition, either because they can't afford sort of better food, or they are just, they just want the quick fix, and, it satiates the hunger temporarily. So I do see some clients with some pretty poor eating habits. Not that I get into that side of it, but I usually will refer them and say, I think you might need to, work on some of that. Because if we meet up in a like for lunch or whatever, and I'm like, okay, there's some unhealthy eating habits comes into it as well. But
I
then also
remember,
that
can
belief.
I just add a little story
Yeah,
there?
yeah,
When Chris and I first got married, I mean, I'd already been running years of like Scrooge, very money scarcity patterns.
yeah.
And we got married, living together. Like literally I would make Chris white sandwiches with Vegemite and one piece of lettuce to
Yeah,
take
it's
to
like-
lunch to prevent him from spending money on takeaway. And like a big bag of home brand chocolate chip cookies that were like $1.
That's so funny.
So, but yeah, so obviously that, you know, that was affecting our health, but it's there's so much fear around it, like in terms of the way that people spend money on food.
Yes, yeah, and even to a certain extent, like I had to work on when I started my business, I was like, I want the free version of everything. I'll have the free version of Zoom, Canva, you know, you name it. And then I got to a point where I was like, this is actually constraining my ability to run the business. So then I was like, this is not, yeah. So I had some of even my own, so, and they constantly come up. It's not to say that we deal with our money stuff and that's it, done, we're good for life. We're always growing and evolving. So we'll hit some sort of a ceiling and some patterns will come up. And you're like, oh, okay. But once you're aware of them and you've dealt with them before, you can start to recognize them a bit easier and you get through them faster. But that's not to say that they're not there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I being like not spending is something I see quite a lot, but then I also see the flip side.
That's me.
Spend a bit too much.
We're opposites.
Well,
I see need, buy the thing, do the thing.
I don't
like
think
money
that's
for me
so
is-
much the case now, but definitely when we first got together, you were like, spend money, do. I'm like, save it. Save it. Whereas
It's very common in a couple to have, I quite often will have clients where one is this, and I'm going to use labels here, but the spender and the other one is the saver.
Yeah.
That's an extreme, but yeah, there do tend to be more underlying tendencies in that regard. And it does often go back to what we've experienced growing up. You know, if you got, you know, praised for saving, or you got, you know, punished for spending, or you weren't even taught how to do either, and you just kind of ended up in this world of I don't know what to do, so you just do a little bit of both. And we've all found ourselves in that position as well. But yeah, so there's the spending, and then there's the fear around investing. And the excuse I hear a lot is, I don't know how to do it. I don't want to make a mistake. It's like, well, to a certain extent, you cannot avoid making, and I use the word mistake loosely because I feel like a lot of it is learning. And if we just reframed a lot of our failures as learning rather than intrinsically feeling like we're a failure because we didn't do something or we didn't get the result that we anticipated, rather than looking at it and going, okay, this is a piece of information. And I realize this is hard to do, but this is a piece of information I now need to work with, rather than just going, okay, that didn't work. Yep. And to a certain extent, you've got to take the emotion out of it and the judgment with it. And that part is difficult to do on your own, which is why sometimes it's easier to have somebody help you with this, because it's, you know, you've got to have that introspection, and with introspection comes a heck of a lot of responsibility. So, but it's worth the work, because once you start on the path, it just makes everything else more, I'm not going to say easier, because it doesn't necessarily become easier, but it becomes clearer, and your path starts to become a little bit easier to follow when you can feel and you listen to the signs. But with money, that is difficult, because we've got people around us who've known us since we were kids. Parents, for example, who, you know, they mean well, but they're going to constantly remind you of the person that you were. And then you'll have friends, and I've lost friends over the way, and it doesn't feel nice when you think back on it, but I was like, we just weren't going to be heading in the same direction. Their mindset was a lot more, and there's that whole fixed and growth mindset. I think there's a continuum in there, but there's that whole, they were staying there and they were happy to stay there, and I wasn't, and I wanted to move. And that's where recognizing that different phases of life that we're in, we need to have the right people around us, and the ones that we can't avoid, like family potentially, we can minimize perhaps the amount of interaction we have, and perhaps the types of things that we tell them. If we know that we say we're going to do something and they're going to nitpick, then just don't say anything. It's sort of things like that, where you selectively inform how things are going to work. And if you're not sure about something, find the right person to brainstorm it or to guide you as well.
It's interesting when you're talking about investment, so like unhealthy or unresourceful money mindsets, and people are scared of investing because they don't know if they're doing the right thing, fear of failure. I would
Yeah.
see that too in people who aren't investing in their health as
Yeah.
well. Like a lot of people will say, "Oh no, I can't afford that because I don't have enough money." But usually, almost always, there's a deeper reason under that I don't actually think I can invest in this because I don't know if I can do it. Like it's that self doubt that they will be able to actually do it, and it's
Yeah.
I'm not
showing
good
up
enough.
in money scarcity. Well,
Yeah.
they're almost using money as the excuse.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they don't want to experience a certain level of discomfort or feel denied. It's a
Mm.
little bit why people fall off the wagon with diets because they're like, oh, I feel like I'm denying myself. I was like, well, and it's the same thing with money. Like I'm always advocating for a fund. If you deny yourself too much, when you do bust out of that, you will bust out of it in a major way that you will then regret. And then you'll feel guilt. And then the cycle will start to repeat itself. So being able to have fun and enjoy the things you want to do. If you want to travel somewhere or you want to go to a concert or you like whatever your thing is that lights you up, and that's why, do it. That's why whenever I hear the stories like, oh, cut out your daily coffee. I'm like, but what if that's the thing that really gets you out of bed in the morning? Then
Mm.
you got to figure out a way to afford the coffee. There might be something else that you can do without, but the coffee is the key, so you got to
Mm.
figure out what that is for you. It's not just about denial.
Mm.
But I think the perception or the anticipation, like I think my husband has some dairy issues, but he doesn't want to find out because I know it will. He's like his first thing he does in the morning is have his cappuccino.
Mhm.
And that would have to change. I was like, well, I have almond milk. I was like, no, that's not real milk. I was like, okay. So yes, it's the thing that we mentally perceive that we cannot overcome. So we don't even want to go down the path of understanding or figuring out what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, I had a lot of scarcity money mindset issues, but as I worked on my own money issues, which was really in correlation in line with relationship issues, health issues, everything stems from the same thing.
Yeah.
What do you see? So, what I discovered was that money, actually, I wasn't scared of money, and money wasn't the issue, but that was the trigger. Is that the type of thing that you see too when you're working with clients? You're kind of going beyond just like the money being the trigger and actually what's the root cause behind the mindset or belief that you have in the first place?
Yes, absolutely. Money's it's the thing that we measure it by.
Mm.
How much I've got in a bank account or how many, the amount of times I hear, these rags to riches stories where somebody's like, oh, I have like 50 properties. I was like, okay, yay for you. But then I'll talk to people who have properties and like, oh, it's such a pain. They take so much work and there's always problems. Some tenant will have done something or, and I'm listening to all this. And to be honest, for me personally, I was like, you know what? I'd prefer to just invest in a property trust rather than actually own multiple physical properties. But we don't necessarily think about what it is that we really want. So there's a lack of clarity and a lack of understanding of what we want. And we think money is the thing that we're seeking. You're like, well, what kind of life do we want? What level of health do we want? What kind of relationships do we want? All of that is really at the root cause of it. And most of the time, money is just the facilitator to make the level of the thing that you want happen. Do you want the Toyota or do you want the Maserati? They're both cars. So, and they're both going to get you to the same place in the same time in the same way. Well, the Maserati might get you there a little faster, but then you'll probably get some speeding fines as well. You know what I mean? Like it's
Going to
the
cost
same
more.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I have a Toyota, by the way. I used to get teased by my friends because I had the same car for 20 years. And I only got rid of it about 2 years ago when it started to cost a lot more to fix than it was worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to let it go.
Yeah.
But to me, it was literally just, yes, I do like nice cars and, I travel places and I get hire cars, which were a lot more fancy than what I had, which was nice. But it was really just a mechanism.
Means to
So
an
the
end.
money, yeah, we assign the value to the thing we use to facilitate the end result, rather than focusing on the end result. And you can either start with the end in mind and work back, or figure out what it is that you want right now, and then start to work towards something, and then clarify that along the path. But then when you figure that out, the money just becomes, well, because quite often people are fearful about money and how much they need. And I was like, well, do you know how much you need? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, well, how much does your lifestyle, what sort of lifestyle do you want? How much money does it need? And they're like, I don't know. I said,
Mm,
so you're scared about something that you don't actually know how much you need. And so there's all of this built around the money side. It's like, well, you don't even know.
mm,
You might need 500,000 in retirement and you might need 2 million, depending on what you want. What do you have now? Like, let's start to look at it and break it down. So yes, no, the underlying issue is almost never the money itself. There's something else there, and there's often, whether it's trauma or experience or stories or habits that are around it that are supporting that current sort of set of circumstances, but the money itself is very much secondary.
mm. Yeah, so interesting. I feel like um, I'm just reflecting as you were talking about that. We built a house and it was lovely, and it is the house we live in. But I remember it was kind of like lack of clarity of what it even would mean. So
Mhm.
when we got the house, all of a sudden I'm like, I don't really want like my sisters to come visit because their houses are more fancy. And so money for me was actually more around attaching my worth onto what I had, and
Yeah,
because I didn't even think that I was much any good.
Mm.
Which, and this was all hidden too. Like from consciously, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty awesome, but like underneath the
yeah,
surface, there was a lot of insecurities, and
yeah,
so therefore, well, even if I had $5 million or a $5 million house, it still wouldn't have ever felt like it was enough because I was trying to attach my worth onto the thing when it has to
yeah,
come from within first.
yeah. Yeah, I remember my dad. He came from absolutely nothing. Like he's the youngest of five. He grew up in a one-bedroom apartment in Skopje in Macedonia, and literally came to Australia with nothing. Built himself up quite well. He had his own business, and he bought for him what was the big house, the show house. After 2 years, he hated it. He's like, it's too big. It's just it doesn't feel like a home. I don't know what I've got all this. People don't even come visit as often as I thought they would. Like he absolutely hated it. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is such, he didn't take the revelation quite the same way I did. But I was just like, wow, this is really interesting. You'd spent your entire life trying to prove to others that you were not that, poor little boy anymore. And it still didn't make you happy because it was external. And that's the other
Mm.
thing too. What actually makes us happy, we don't even need money to fulfill it. Money does, sweeten the pot, and it does give you more choices. But ultimately, if we're not happy on the inside, then money's just going to make the problem either bigger and or small. Like, it's just the thing on the outside that facilitates
Mm,
what we see, not
Mm.
necessarily what's in here.
yeah. Well, it will cause more or the same issues because your belief system is choosing to believe that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. You are still you, regardless of whether or not you have money or you don't have money.
Yeah. In our practice, we love looking at the mind body connection, the brain neural pathways, how that impacts body systems and chronic health issues and people's ability to heal.
Yeah.
You also look at the connection, hey, between brain and money mindset. Can you talk into that?
Yes. So a lot of this comes down to habits, the way in the work, the way I do the work. And it's those pathways that we repeat. It's the highways and the trenches that we dig, and how the beliefs themselves will create that as well, and then that will impact the experiences we have, and then the habits we have, and then I call it the formation cycle, and it all loops back to each other, and it becomes a bit like what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, I believe this, then I have this experience, and then my behaviors repeat, and then I get the same belief experience, and it's all just linked together.
Mm,
And we kind of have to figure out a way to interrupt that. And quite often things like trauma will interrupt it, or having a child, which was probably one of the main interruptions for me. um, Something else, and it's usually, unfortunately, something negative and dramatic that will happen to interrupt that pattern. It's not like anybody's going to, win the lottery and suddenly go, oh, hey, I have different beliefs about money.
mm,
Otherwise, we wouldn't have so many bankrupt lottery winners.
mm,
So it's really, understanding how our brains, like I said, work in terms of what we see as our level of survival and what we can do in order to keep going in the life that we currently have. And if we want to make any changes, then there's a certain level of, oh dear, danger. danger. What are we going to actually do to make the changes? And figuring out clarity of what we want and why, and sort of training our brains to accept incremental changes so that when we start to make them, it doesn't throw too many obstacles in our way, and we don't self-sabotage as well, because we need to stay back on the path that we're on. It's a little bit like, I don't know if you've seen that movie, The Adjustment Bureau.
Yeah.
We're watching that the other night, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so much of what I do. They have the little books with everybody's path or the plan on it. And I was going, yeah, this is where I'm like, I would be in helping people interrupt that plan. We'd be, doing the hats and running through the doors and trying to outrun the plan. But that's how difficult it can sometimes feel. And that's why there's so much avoidance around dealing with money, because we metaphorically have this plan that we think is the one we've chosen, even though it often isn't really our choice. It's usually a conglomeration of all sorts of other things that have happened in our lives, things that we've been told, things that we believe, things that we've seen, things that we've experienced, and our brains take all that and then mush it together and think that this is us. This is who I am, and I can't change that. I'm like, well, no, you can. It does take a bit of work, though, to start to rewire it and to change adjust the plan. So that's where the work starts, and that's internal, external. I can't, there's no magic pill really for that. And I've seen lots of modalities and tools that help, but ultimately you have to want to make those sorts of changes. You have to want to break the patterns. And it takes conscious effort for a fair while until it starts to become more innate. It's that whole concept of habits and how long it has to happen before a habit's built in. And even then, sometimes you still have to consciously do it too. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And then I guess like the follow-up question, so if someone really wants to do it, how do you start rewiring?
You've got to start with awareness first. You've got to actually identify what those neural pathways are and what the beliefs are. And and by that, you sort of break down the things that you've done in your life, and you kind of go, okay, so when you were in your teenage years, what did you experience? So usually, we can blame our parents for a heck of a lot of stuff. And to a certain extent, that's real. But we have to be aware of what were their money stories? What did we see? What did we hear? And we kind of move forward from there. And already, to be honest, most of my clients have their biggest revelations from the ages of about 10 or 11 to the age of about 18. And that period of time in our lives is so formatory or formation making that we will have relationships with our parents. Quite often it's a sibling. Like, for instance, you said the other day, someone why can't you be more like Philly, in terms of saving? You have that, and then that built in, and then you're like, okay, so this is the good thing. I need to keep doing that. But then you're like, is it really the good thing, or is it an away from behavior, or is it toward behavior? So we start to look at that, and then you look at how the decisions, what's behind the decisions that you've made. And it's not necessarily about money, because sometimes money is just the side effect in your 20s, and we look in your 30s, and then we start to look now, and you're like, okay, with all of that knowledge and a little bit more of an awareness about your money history, what do you want now going forward? If you could choose anything, let's go completely unconstrained, what would you do? What would you want? How would you want to live? And I have a lifestyle meditation that I take my clients through, and it's very sensory. And quite often it'll come up with things that are quite surprising. They'll be like, I didn't know that was so important to me. I was like, okay. And then we'll have to, okay, so why is it important to you? And I'm always, that the why. I love Simon Sinek. And because I think we underestimate how many layers of other people's stuff we have in our psyche. Or something that your grandma may have said when you're a kid, or something that a teacher may have said that impacted you or didn't impact you in a way that it should have. Like I had a school counselor say to me when I was a teenager that I'd only ever amount to being a sales assistant. And I'm like, thank God I didn't believe her. And I was like, and I actually was a sales assistant for a while I was at university, but it never occurred to me that that was it. But that's because my brain had I would probably already tuned off when she started speaking, because I have a tendency to do that when people get a bit too on and on. And because my mum was like that. My mum used to just in the car, because I used to ice skate a lot, and the ice skating rink was quite far from our home. So we spent a lot of time in the car. She used to lecture me in the car constantly. So of course I learned to tune off. So I probably tuned off when the school counselor said that. thankfully. But there's those sorts of things that if you go back and you become aware of it, you're like, oh my gosh, that makes so many things make sense. And then you start to become aware of the patterns that you're currently behaving in. And that awareness then leads to some interruptions, and then you can start to work with it. But you've got to go back first. You can't do it without that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yep. Everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, I did that. Yeah. Something that really helped me to shift money stuff too was there's a great book, Happy Money. Have you read that one? Happy Money.
I actually just read it.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah.
Yes, I literally just read it.
There was literally just like a paragraph or maybe a chapter where he talked about money. Money's always been there for you. Money's your friend. Money's got your back. And I remember reading that and having like a visceral and emotional experience in my body. So obviously I was ready to receive that information for it to then create new neural pathways but it felt like a real big light bulb moment, because before that moment I always felt like it was hard and scary and, I wasn't very good with it, even though I could save, but, it just caused a lot of stress. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? Even like at our poorest times, money always was there for us. We always got through. Money always had our back. Yeah, money's our friend. So then as I started spending money or, paying a bill or receiving money, it's just like, oh, I love you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Like literally creating money as an object or a person in my head that is like my best friend. And it was so nice. And it really shifted things quite fast.
Yeah, that relationship with money, like when I first read a book where it actually talked about that, I was like, yes, we actually do have a relationship with money. It is, if we spend so much time thinking about and around a thing or a person, then we need to actually work on how that is and the level of gratitude as well, because nobody wants to be ignored. Nobody likes to not feel important. So if we've got money that's flowing in and out of our life, have gratitude and I guess appreciate the relationship that you have with it and the flow that goes with it. So paying a bill rather than just going appreciative of the fact that you had the thing or the service that you got from it, whether it's a phone or power or water or whatever it is, appreciate the thing that you got and that you have the ability to pay it. So it's yes, and that can sound a little bit woo-woo, I suppose is the word a lot of people use, but it's exactly where you said it creates a different energy. Like even physiology changes when you think of it that way.
And around that, my last question was going to be around how can you raise your money energy? Is that what we're talking about? Or are there
exactly
other ways?
it. Yeah. A lot of it is gratitude, and it's not just gratitude for money, but it's gratitude for everything. There's I have a daily, like people journal. I have a gratitude journal, and that's what I do every day. And I've got into the habit now of trying to be more in the moment grateful rather than just at the end of the day trying to reflect on the day. So I'm bringing it more into my physical present body of as I'm, if I'm cycling in the morning going, oh, wow, I'm grateful for being able to breathe such beautiful fresh air and being able to freely cycle around and to have the physical capability to do that. And just getting into that elevating your overarching energy. And then when it comes to money, really watch your responses to when it comes up. And if you feel your body contracting or freezing, just tuning into the awareness of that. And then making small little changes in terms of how you actually look at dealing with money. So just, when the bills come, rather than putting them aside, get used to just opening it and trying to reduce the emotion that goes with it. And it's a piece of paper with a number on it, yes. And it might be higher or maybe lower than you anticipate, but just trying to watch that energetics around it. I mean, there's a lot more to go with it, but there's some foundational starting places.
Yeah, so cool. We had a conversation, I think it was yesterday. It reminded me of when you were saying like, oh yeah, it's really hard to run a business when I was just using like the free Zoom and everything. Anyway, Chris increased our Google Drive storage.
Oh yeah, I was just like, oh, we need that. I'll buy that. And so I bought it. And then Philly's like, that's really expensive. It's like $40.
Well, hang on. No, this is what happened in my body. And this is what I did to like clear it quite quickly. I saw the email. I'm like, Google Drive has like increased our storage. I didn't do that. Like, I'm usually the one that pays the bills. Oh dear, what's happening? Ask Chris. Did you do that?
Yeah.
And then he's like, I think he said like, yeah, it's $40 a month. I'm like, that's actually quite a lot of money for storage.
You're like, that's a lot of, that's really expensive. I'm like, is it?
And then it was so interesting because I caught myself in the moment that was definitely like a pattern that would show up all the time for me. And then I'm like, what's actually like the issue underneath this?
Yeah.
And then in my head, I'm like, you know what? There actually isn't any at all anymore. We've got enough money to be able to pay for the storage, and it's going to make our awesome EA's
just
life
drives me nuts.
So much easier, because for months he had been deleting things because it was reaching out to the storage.
I couldn't upload recordings for our calls and our podcasts and things like that. I'm like, oh, this is doing my head in. Upload. So, how much is it to upload? Upgrade. Done.
And I mentioned that because that frustration that I was already feeling, you had felt last night, and I'm pretty sure Jerson was probably like, this is really annoying, like needing to like delete things all the time, was literally reducing energy. And it was purely around paying $40 a month. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? Life is going to be so much easier and freer to allow this to flow out of our bank account.
And that awareness, because it then will because then there's an exchange as well. So there's more energy there. So if the money's going out, and I know this sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but then it allows more exchange for more money to come back again. So if we're constantly holding on to things, it doesn't allow exchange either way. It's a little bit like, and I had to learn this the hard way, and I'm still learning it. I'm not very good at accepting help. And I helped my mum do some market stalls recently. And the first thing that happened when we got to the first market we did was this man ran over to help us put the gazebo up. And I was like, I can do that. And I was like, just let him help, because it allows me to feel the benefit of being helped. And it really makes this person's day to be able to help, because it's that nice exchange of energy. And it felt really good. And I was like, I need to allow others to help me more, so that I can then help others too. So there's that reciprocal energy exchange rather than it always being one way. So it's the same thing with money.
Yeah, just need Google to help us more. Just give the money and it helps us. It's so good.
But like, being aware of it meant you got over that faster.
Well, yeah, and I know that in the past that would be still sitting in my body right now, and I would probably be really mad at you that you didn't ask me if it was okay, whereas it was just kind of like, oh, this actually makes life easier. This is totally fine. Yeah. We're safe. Like, I'm safe. Is there any danger here? No, I'm safe.
And then I go through that exact same conversation in my head. I'm like, is it okay that Philly, my wife, is getting angry at me right now? Yeah, I'm safe. This is a Philly issue.
Yeah, it's because sometimes it generally is the other person's issue, and you can't really do much about it except allow them the space to move through their stuff.
Yeah. Oh, this has been fun. Thank you so much. I do love talking about money these days. And you know what? Again, I can acknowledge my growth too, because I think I would have felt really awkward asking someone to come onto our podcast to talk about money. It would have been like, oh, money's yuck. No, that might make people
talk about money.
That might make people feel uncomfortable. So, I mean, if there is a listener that's felt like a little bit like, oh, this feels uncomfortable, great opportunity to look into that.
Yes, absolutely.
Now
thank you both so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome. So you have a free training video on money mindset. Can you chat about that, how to find it, and also how to find you if people want to learn more about what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Probably my website's the easiest because it has links to everything in there. So that's money-madesimple.com.au. I've got links to all my socials in there, and I've got a whole area of freebies. So I've got one specifically on money mindset. And while it is for female entrepreneurs, the principles apply to everybody. I've also got another free video training called 5 Ways to Improve Your Finances. So that one's more of an overarching. So the mindset is more the literally how to overcome the mind side of it. And then the 5 Ways also include some of the mechanics of how to manage your money too. Cool. So they're both free trainings are on my website under the freebies.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much, Alpha, for coming on. I'm excited to connect again and read some more of your stuff, and we'll have links to everything down in the show notes. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We shall see you on the next one. See you, Alpha.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you. If you'd like to give us extra smiles, drop us a review and spread the love by sharing this episode.
You can also rate your own state of burnout and the root cause contributors by taking our Ending Body Burnout Assessment on our website. And if you're interested in learning about our group or one-on-one Ending Body Burnout programs, shoot us a DM via Instagram or Facebook.
Have the best day ever.